Hi, my name is TJ. My dad died of overdose on January 1st, 2011, and my mom is a recovering addict. God helped my mom, and now together we are here to help you. Now let's talk recovery. Here's your host, my mom, Susan Sexton-Wood.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Recovery. I'm your host for today, Debbie Lahman. I am the president of the board of Unchained Praises. And I love this time that we get together so that I can kind of turn the tables on Susan, and we get to pick her brain and put her in the hot seat sometimes. But we're not doing that today. First of all, let's just go ahead and say hi to Susan. How you doing, Susan?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good, good. Got a new year starting, don't we?
Yeah. Yep.
And the one thing, we were talking about this just today in the office, and I was pointing out that I heard on the news today that the number one reason, I guess, or cause of death in the United States is the opioid addiction epidemic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and you were just saying that that was even talked about last night at one of the meetings that you were at.
Yeah.
Talk about that for just a minute.
It's just the number one cause now for death. The leading cause of death is, it's more than any traffic accident. It's because of overdose is now the leading reason for death in the United States.
Well, and that's, of course, you live that 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. When you leave the office, if you will, of Unchained Praises, you never leave Unchained Praises because you deal with that. In the first place, you deal with it because your own recovery. Mm-hmm. I've always liked what you've always said is that recovery is a lifestyle change, and that's the only way that there's going to be victory. Right. And the whole reason for Unchained Praises is for us to be, us meaning Unchained Praises, to be the voice of hope. Because the one thing I want to say to you all out there is there is hope. And that is what Susan talks about all the time. That's what God laid on your heart, to be able to give hope to not only addicts but their families. Right. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, in addiction, there's so much stereotype out there. There's so much death. There's so much heartbreak. There's so much sadness that there's not any hope. And when you see somebody that comes out of the addiction and they start changing their life, that is that lifestyle change, then there becomes hope. There becomes hope that there is a life after addiction. And so we want to spread the hope after addiction, that there is life after addiction. And so that's where the hope comes in, that you can live a life after being in active addiction and living a life of regret and sadness and heartache and a heartbreaking situation.
So once you're in recovery, then everything is perfect and everything is fine, right?
No, it's not.
Really?
And we still have life. Life still happens.
Is that something that you think that a lot of addicts do they understand that? Is that a reality, or do they hang on to that false thing, thinking I'm sober, I'm in recovery, so I'm good?
I think most people in recovery know that life is not perfect. I think we all go through, when we have very hard times in our recovery. Why did I change my life to live like this? I think we all go through that, but to keep pressing on and to keep fighting through those hard times, we get through it.
How do you encourage someone? Because for those of you who don't know, Susan is a recovery coach, and she has all sorts of different credentials that she has, and I might have her elaborate on that in just a second. But one of the things is, in being a recovery coach, how do you encourage somebody like that? When they you understand what you just said?
Well, to encourage them to look at the things that they can be grateful for. What do you have in your life today that you didn't have in your life when you were in addiction? Most people didn't have a job. Most of us probably didn't have a vehicle. We didn't have a home. Most of us didn't have our children. Most of us didn't have a life. We existed, but we weren't living. And so to look at the things that are positive in our lives and reflect back in the things that were negative on our lives, then we can start to be grateful for the things, how our lives have changed. And by reflecting on our past and being grateful for the things that are in our present, we can realize just how much our lives have changed.
And you know, along with that, one of the things I was thinking about with our program today is kind of the avenue that we're looking at going down for this year with Unchained Praises. And one of those, because of this epidemic being so mass, and there is not a community, there's probably not a family that is not affected in some manner.
Right.
And because of that, one of the things that Unchained Praises tries to do, not only are we the voice of hope, but we also are doing something about it. It's not just a motto, it's not just our name that we're just tagging out there. We're actually doing something about it. And we want to be able to get into the communities, get into businesses. And now that may sound strange to say, you're getting into business. Yeah, we are. This is what we are wanting to do. We are wanting to, and this is what we're doing right now, is if you are a business owner, and obviously you have employees, and what we're looking at doing, we're looking at holding workshops, or sometimes we call them lunch and learns. So it's just over your lunch hour. And we have a presentation that can be as short as a half an hour, because we know that some lunch hours are only a half an hour. And we would come to the business, and we have a beautiful slide presentation that we would be doing, as well as giving some literature. One of them is our books that Susan has one right now. But the whole purpose of it is to be able to, as what we like to say, is motivate, educate, and connect. That is the basis for Unchained Praises, is to be able to motivate that addict to seek recovery, not just sobriety, but to seek recovery. And then for us to be an encouragement to the addict to help them through, because you need help. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Speak to that for just a little bit. Why you just don't get sober and you're good to go.
Well, we need help. We need help to motivate us to be something different. We don't believe in ourselves, and for other people to motivate us to believe in ourselves, especially until we can believe in ourselves again, is very needed. Without people to motivate me, I would have never been able to start doing the things that I started to do.
Right.
Because I didn't believe in myself, and it took other people to encourage me and lift me up until I was able to do that.
And that's the whole purpose with us wanting to present these lunch and learns or workshops. And I have the slides that we actually have, and I just printed them off, and this is just for me to use a little bit as a cheat sheet here. But one of the things that I think is great, and it's usually about our second or third slide, we do recover. We do. You don't have to stay in that state of, I don't know what you would call it, limbo almost, where you know that, you can know that we can recover, that is a possibility. And as a recovery coach, what you're doing there is you're pointing things out to them. Is that correct? I mean, I know you listen to them a lot, and you listen to what they say, and obviously you're in tune with that. You want to elaborate on that for just a minute?
Well, you want to listen to them, and you want to encourage them to keep moving forward, and encourage them to set goals, encourage them to get back out in the community, and encourage them to start building their life over, because we're so self-destructive in our addiction that we need to be motivated and to rebuild in our life. And so to have someone help you by encouraging you to keep moving forward and to set those goals, I can't do it for them. But I can help connect them to the resources out there that can help them with a goal, if it's going back to school, or if they need some kind of therapy that we don't offer therapy or drug and alcohol counseling. We're a recovery coach and recovery specialist. We want to encourage them to go do that. A lot of people need family counseling when it comes to the kids and the mothers and fathers. We want to encourage that family time, because that's needed, because families are torn apart. So we want to connect them to the resources that's out in the community to help them with their goal setting too, because we want to see them accomplish the goals. There's a lot of resources out there when it comes to job seeking. Some training to get a better job, to be able to provide for yourself a little bit better than you used to be able to do that too.
Is it harder to coach an addict or a family member?
Probably family member.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because you don't want to believe that you can't love the addiction out of your loved one. You want to think that you have all the answers, but nobody really has all the answers for this, and it's not a simple, easy fix. And so it's probably harder for the families.
Yeah, and I get that. Of course, I knew that, but yeah, I can see where it would be much harder. I really do, because you second guess yourself. One of the things that we do present in our presentation are the 5 stages. I believe it's 5, if I'm not 5 stages that we go through. Now, do you know them all by heart necessarily?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Tell our audience what those stages are. Okay.
Well,
You want this?
pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Pre-contemplation is when we don't believe that we even have a problem. We're making excuses for the most part.
Okay.
Preparation, we are starting to believe that we do have a problem. We're starting to look at maybe some things. We're starting to address it a little bit. Starting to look at things from a different viewpoint. Action, we're actually starting to take. Let me see.
Preparation.
Preparation.
Now is an action.
Pre-contemplation. Preparation. I said preparation, didn't I? Now I'm at action.
No, you didn't go on
Pre-contemplation. Contemplation. Preparation. Okay, preparation. So starting to take the steps necessary to make some changes.
Right.
Action, we're actually doing some things to make those changes. And then maintenance, we've actually been doing it, and we're taking the necessary steps daily, on a daily basis, to continue working on ourselves. We've actually been doing it.
Right. These stages are also the same stages that a family member goes through.
Right.
Which may sound funny to the family member. Show how it applies to a family member. Pretty much the same way.
The same way.
So the pre-contemplation.
You don't want to think that your family member really has a problem.
And so you're kind of in denial.
Yeah.
You're kind of in denial. Okay. So it's. I thought that was very amazing, really, that to extent, there's not a difference,
Right.
other than the addict is, their body is consuming the drug that's actually killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the loved ones, they're of course just now watching the loved one basically die. And so it's, but what we want to do with this, when we go into a business, a lunch hour, it could be a club, an organization that you would want Susan to come and present this. Because when we go, we're just skimming the surface here, telling you the 5 stages. We go into what we call our action goals, and definitely much more in depth. But it's a way, I've said this so many times in the office, where we have so much education. It's not for a lack of education. I think it's more for understanding, for accepting, and for being accountable.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more. It's more in those action areas. The action goals is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
That's where things start happening. Because, you know, you can go to any school, you can pick up, you can Google it, it doesn't make any difference. You know, there's 100 ways to go and find out all of the horrors of being an addiction. We don't have to tell anybody that there's horrors in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every family in some manner has been affected, whether it's somebody that they know in a friendship, or a loved one, a spouse, a child. You know, there's no it crosses all lines.
Right.
And as we said before, you know, there's all sorts of different addicts, some that we've kind of jokingly or affectionately, not jokingly, referred to as, what's the word I want? Not a working addict, but a functioning addict, to where sometimes there's been people, and we know firsthand, that can hold a job and just seem to be doing wonderful. And if when people have found out later that they were an addict, Are you serious? They didn't
Right.
even know it.
Right.
So the functioning, the ones that are non-functioning, which you see kind of splattered all over the news and everything, are the ones that definitely have lost everything, that, you know,
Their life spirals out of control.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's not a respecter of persons.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to do with Unchained Praises, that I'm just trying to stress so much, is that we want, we feel it's so equal between the addict and the family members or the loved ones. The need is just as equal.
Right.
We know, you know, as you said before, that the one of the things that we deal with in here as well as is don't be afraid or panic if there's a relapse.
Yeah.
That's very common, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very
Talk about
common.
that. Give some reassurance to those who either it's happened to, and maybe it's happened more than once, and the family member. How do you encourage the people that you talk to in your coaching sessions?
Well, it's very common in the recovery world for somebody to relapse, and there's a difference in lapse and relapse. A lapse is a lapse in judgment, where it's like a one-time thing. A relapse is where you've fully relapsed, and it's more than one day. But when I look at relapse, I encourage somebody to look at recovery and sobriety different, because your date may change. And so if your date changes, even though that may change, you still have recovery time. And so look at that. Look at your recovery time as a lifestyle change. So when you look at that, look at your life is still changed. And so grasp onto that and pick up where you left off. And you don't have to go back to where you were. Some people get so discouraged when they've relapsed that they think they have to go all the way back to the very beginning of when they started their recovery journey. and you don't have to do that because your life has already changed.
So how do you do that? Because I'm thinking I would be like what you think there's thinking. Well, okay, fine. Now I got to go back, clear back over here, and start all over.
No, your date changes, but you don't forget everything that you've learned in your recovery. You don't forget the things that you learned in your meetings and the groups that you've joined. You don't forget your tools of recovery that you used on a daily basis. Sometimes you hear the saying, go back to the basics, and that's go back to the things that worked for you best at the beginning of your recovery, and you may need to go back to more meetings. If you went to 5 meetings a week and you had only been going to a couple and you relapsed, maybe go back to 5 meetings a week again. But you don't forget everything that you learned. So even though your date may change, your recovery time hasn't changed.
Okay, tell our audience the importance, because sometimes I know maybe family members, when they see their loved one, the addict, going to meetings, do they ever say, like, you go to a lot of meetings, you really, you don't need to go to that many?
That happens a lot, and I would just encourage the families to let their loved one decide how many meetings they need.
Tell them what you feel is a huge benefit of those meetings that they may not be seeing, because there is a huge benefit.
Well, we learn in the meetings. It gives us time to build on our recovery. We learn from other people. We learn new tools in the meeting. If we're having a bad day and we go to a meeting, we draw strength from that meeting. And so, we have to determine whether we need a meeting or not. And that's where we grow in our own individual recovery. We need to determine whether we need a meeting or not. That's where we learn how to build on our own recovery. If somebody tells me I need a meeting, then I'm not building my own recovery. I need to learn how to build my own recovery, and I need to know my triggers and my own downfall. If I need a meeting, I need to learn how to get to a meeting.
So it's basically you realizing yourself, I need the meeting.
Right.
And then you're taking responsibility now of saying, okay, I see that I need that. So now I'm going to take action and I'm going to go to it.
Right.
So I had never, you and I had never talked about that before, about, where maybe family members are thinking, boy, you're going to a lot of meetings. And I know a lot of them don't understand.
Well, families think that after a certain amount of time we're cured and that we're okay. We've done our time in rehab and we've done our time in the support groups and now we're better. But it doesn't work like that, because it's a daily thing that we have to do, and sometimes we don't need as many meetings as we used to because our life changes, and as long as we keep a very tight structure in our lives and we're filling our time, then usually we're okay. When at the beginning of recovery, a lot of us don't have jobs. So we're doing a lot of meetings because we don't have a job. But then when you get a job, then your meetings, you don't do as many because you have a job, and then you're not doing as many meetings, but you're still attending some meetings. Some people don't do meetings, but they're doing some one-on-one because they are uncomfortable in a meeting. So everybody doesn't go to like peer support groups, which is a lot of people, because they're uncomfortable in meetings. So you hear a lot of sayings that meeting makers make it, and that's saying that if you go to a lot of meetings, you're going to make it in recovery, and that works for some people. But there are some people that don't like meetings because they're uncomfortable in that setting. So they do one-on-ones, or they go to church. They give back to their community. They do some volunteer work. People, it just depends on what you need for your personal recovery, and that's where we have to learn what we need, and we have to find what we need and what's going to work for us.
Well, and that's what, again, if we kind of look back at what I started out with initially with this program, was wanting to be able to share this information with the businesses in town so that they can see that they can help their employees, because we know that employers spend a lot of money training employees, and for the most part they like who they hire, and for the most part they're good workers. But when those times come when that person may have lapsed or is still trying to get clean, as you were, when that happens, if they lose that person, either through death, unfortunately, or because they're missing a lot, if the employer can again show that employee, I care about you, I want you to know that there is help for you. Because it's not just a matter of, okay, we're going to have this workshop, we're going to have this lunch and learn, and I'm going to tell you all about the horrors and whatnot about being an addict. Okay, they know that.
Right.
The addict knows it, and the family knows it. They know the horrors of being an addict. But what we're doing is we're explaining some of the actions specifically to the family, but also reminding the addict, this is what you're doing. And it helps that addict to even examine themselves. What stage am I in?
Right.
I thought I was in this stage, but I know I haven't done this yet, and I know I haven't done that. So it's just opening up even more. Mm-hmm. So, you all will see periodically and have seen through this broadcast our phone number. And, please get in touch with us, because this is something that we feel is of a big service to be able to put out to the community, to be able to give them information so that we can motivate, so that we can educate, and then we can connect. Mm-hmm. I liked what you said also about the fact that everything, and if I've heard you say this once, I've heard you say this 100 times, that everybody's recovery is individual. It is not a cookie cutter at all. And I've seen you do that with the people that you are coaching on your one-on-one sessions that you're in there with. And I have remarked at some that we're seeing that are growing. Sometimes it's slow, and we get excited and we want it, but that's what we're here for. That's the whole 9 yards, is because you are a perfect example of someone in recovery. We both know you've had struggles. We both know it's not easy, but we both know also that by God's help, and you've always stated that first and foremost, you'll make it through every time you stub your toe.
Right.
So we want to thank you, Susan, for letting me turn the tables on you.
You're welcome.
And again, please understand that we're praying for you. We pray for your loved ones, and we want to extend to you an invitation to contact us at Unchained Praises. Thank you so much. And we hope that you have a most blessed night. In God's name, we thank you.